Ring, ring, ring. The insistent chirping of his mobile phone sliced through the pre-dawn darkness. He fumbled for the phone, his heart already heavy. Even before he answered, he knew. It was his daughter, her voice tiny and fragile, asking if he could send a little extra this month. The school fees were due. He squeezed his eyes shut, the weight of their expectations a physical ache in his chest. He had come to this country, this land of opportunity, to build a better future for them. A future where education wasn't a luxury. But the law, in its well-meaning attempt to protect, felt like a cage. It dictated how many hours he could work, how much he could earn. It didn't know, couldn't understand, that his family's dreams were riding on every extra hour, every extra pound. He promised his daughter he would find a way, he always did. But the truth gnawed at him. How long could he keep this promise? How long before the law's invisible hand crushed the hope he clung to so fiercely? Back home, things were simple. Work hard, provide for your family. There were no safety nets, no minimum wages, just the raw, relentless struggle for survival. He had worked construction, back-breaking labor under a scorching sun. He had worked in factories, the air thick with dust and the din of machinery. He had known exhaustion, but he had also known dignity. The dignity of being the provider, the protector. Here, in this world of polished sidewalks and regulated working hours, he was a foreigner, a guest worker. His life was a series of permits and restrictions, his movements monitored, his options limited. He was grateful for the safety, the better pay, but the irony was bitter. He had come to escape poverty, not to be imprisoned by prosperity. He spent his forced days off hunched over his kitchen table, a calculator his only companion. Rent, groceries, bills. The numbers marched across the page, a stark reminder of his limitations. And then there were the remittances, the lifeblood that flowed back home, keeping his family afloat. Every pound sent was a victory, but every pound represented a sacrifice he hadn't anticipated. The law, they said, was designed to protect workers, to prevent exploitation. But he felt like a pawn in a game he didn't understand. He watched as his local counterparts clocked out at 5 p.m. sharp, heading home to families and hobbies. He saw their weekends filled with laughter and leisure, and he felt a surge of resentment, quickly followed by a wave of shame. It wasn't their fault. They didn't understand the burden he carried, the weight of a family's hopes and dreams resting on his shoulders. He yearned to work those extra hours, to push himself to the limit, to earn every penny he could. He wasn't afraid of hard work. He craved it. It was his ticket to a better life, a life where his children wouldn't have to carry the same burdens. But the law stood in his way, a well-intentioned barrier that felt more like a wall.
It wasn't just him. He saw the same frustration, the same quiet desperation in the eyes of other foreign workers. The taxi drivers working double shifts, the cleaners scrubbing floors late into the night, the construction workers laboring under the watchful eyes of supervisors. They were all bound by the same invisible chains, their dreams shackled by a system that couldn't comprehend their reality.
"It's like being trapped," whispered the Filipino caregiver he met at the local remittance center. "We came here for a better life, but we're stuck in this in-between place. Not allowed to fully live, not allowed to fully provide."
Her words resonated deeply. They were all living in the shadows, their sacrifices unseen, their voices unheard. He remembered his own mother, her hands roughened by years of toil, her back bent from carrying the weight of their family. He had vowed to give his children a different life, but sometimes it felt like he was destined to repeat the cycle of struggle. The faces of his children, their smiles tinged with worry, haunted his waking hours. He knew they understood, even at their young age, that their lives were intertwined with his sacrifices. He thought of the friends he had left behind, the ones who hadn't been lucky enough to get a visa, who toiled in obscurity, their dreams deferred. He carried their hopes too, the weight of their expectations a constant reminder of his own good fortune and his own limitations. The weekends, once a time for rest, were now the most difficult. The silence of my small apartment pressed in on me, amplifying my loneliness and my anxieties. I longed to call home, to hear my children's laughter, to feel the warmth of my wife's love. But the time difference meant it was the middle of the night back home. I couldn't bear to wake them, to burden them with my worries, so I stayed silent, my heart a knot of conflicting emotions. I thought of quitting, of returning home, of admitting defeat. But the thought of facing my family, of seeing the hope drain from their eyes, was unbearable. I was trapped, not by physical chains, but by the invisible bonds of love and duty. I was a prisoner of my own making, my cell built on the foundation of my dreams for a better future. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had come to a land of freedom, only to find myself more restricted than ever before. I had sought opportunity, but found myself bound by an intricate web of rules and regulations. I had yearned for a better life, but discovered that true freedom lay not in the absence of constraints, but in the ability to choose one's own sacrifices. He looked at his reflection in the window, his face etched with fatigue and worry. He barely recognized the man staring back at him. Where was the young man who had boarded that plane, his heart filled with hope and ambition? Had he lost himself in this labyrinth of regulations and restrictions? He thought of the sacrifices his parents had made for him, the opportunities they had never had. He was determined to break the cycle of poverty, to give his children the wings to fly. But at what cost? Was he sacrificing his own happiness, his own well-being, in pursuit of a future that seemed perpetually out of reach? He knew he wasn't alone. Millions of migrant workers around the world faced the same challenges. Their lives a constant negotiation between their dreams and the realities of their circumstances. They were the invisible backbone of the global economy, their labor fueling the engine of progress. Yet they remained largely unseen, unheard, and undervalued. He picked up his phone and scrolled through photos of his family. His wife's radiant smile, his son's gap-toothed grin, his daughter's bright, curious eyes. They were his everything, his reason for being. They were his wealth, his treasure, his legacy. He knew he couldn't give them everything, but he could give them something far more valuable, a chance to break free from the chains of poverty, to pursue their own dreams, to write their own stories. And for that, he was willing to endure any hardship, to overcome any obstacle. He knew his struggles were not unique. They were the shared experiences of countless individuals who had dared to dream of a better life, who had crossed borders and continents in search of opportunity. Their stories, though often untold, were testaments to the resilience of the human spirit, the unwavering power of hope. He looked out at the city lights, a kaleidoscope of colors against the night sky. This city, this country, had given him so much, yet it had also taken its toll. He had learned that freedom was a complex concept, a tapestry woven from rights and responsibilities, opportunities and limitations. He had no easy answers, no solutions to offer, but he had a plea for understanding, for empathy, for a recognition of the humanity that bound them all. He asked not for pity, but for a chance to be seen, to be heard, to be valued for his contributions, not just for his labor. He had a message for his fellow migrant workers: never give up hope, never stop fighting for a better future, and never forget the sacrifices that brought you here. For in those sacrifices lay your strength, your resilience, your unwavering spirit. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the darkness, he knew he had a choice to make. He could succumb to despair, or he could rise to meet the challenges ahead. And he chose to rise. For he knew that the future, like his love for his family, knew no bounds. Support the Foreigner Storyteller by liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel.